Well, this might be the best episode of the Encounter Faith podcast, mainly because we've already been talking for 43 minutes and you're only going to hear a little bit of it, dear listener. My name is Ross and I am sitting down with my friend, Melanie Hester. First of all, friend, it is so great to see you.
Oh man, this has been the highlight of my week.
Now, for those of you who don't know, which is probably most of you, Melanie and I used to work together. And as much as I would have liked to have worked for Melanie, that never quite happened during our time at Awana. So Melanie, I genuinely don't know this. What is your title now at Awana?
That's a great question. That's a little bit of an inside joke for those of you listening, because quite honestly, the experience that Ross and I had together, it changed regularly for both of us in what we were doing. So let me put it this way. I am the director of discipleship engagement. Apparently, I don't even know my own title. The director of discipleship engagement at Awana. And here's what that means. Awana is an organization who is bent on reaching kids with the foundational truths of the gospel and helping them to see that they have a creator who knows and loves them and wants to walk this life journey with them. We do that all over the world. And it's incredible. I get the distinct opportunity to be able to come alongside parents and church leaders and help them to just disciple children together. And so that looks like in your specific context, it would be like, hey, how do we help the parents in the Good Shepherd community and also the children's ministry team at Good Shepherd to be able to unite together for child discipleship to see those children thrive in their faith, loving and serving Jesus forever.
Amen to that. A couple of things that Melanie didn't say is Melanie helps kind of steer a lot of the content here at there at Awana. One of the things that was really cool from my experience here is we became a Bright church. Bright is from Awana. It's a Sunday curriculum from Awana. And that didn't have anything to do with me. But one of my favorite things, I guess this is the right place to start, Melanie. When I left Awana about 18 months ago, we were reaching like maybe a little under 6 million. We had just celebrated reaching 5 million. You guys are now reaching 8.5 million kids every week, something like that. Was it me? Like 2.5 million additional kids over that amount of time. It does feel a little personal.
I mean, the answer is always you, Russ. Let's be real. Whether it's good or bad, it's always you. But yeah, no, like a little bit of context to that, like it's over 8.6 million kids that are discipled every single week. And we don't take any of that based on anything that we've done. But through the power of the Holy Spirit, like God has brought hearts of children to the minds of Indigenous leaders in over 134 different countries. And these leaders, and maybe you're listening and saying like, well, yeah, I serve in my local church. It's leaders like you all over the world who are willing to say like, hey, these kids, they deserve to know and love God. And so there's over 8.6 million kids every week that are hearing about that. But here's the thing, I'll give you a little bit of free thing here. There are over 2 billion children in the world right now. So in that sense, though there are many of us working together, like God is so good in helping us to see where we're at, but also the potential of where we need to be and how God covers the gaps.
In the show notes, wherever you're listening, that's a good word. You got better at self-promoting since I left. Wherever you're listening, you can learn more about Awana. I would highly recommend that you do. But that's actually not really why I asked Melanie to come on this. Melanie and I used to do the Child Discipleship podcast together on a regular basis. Melanie was the friend that I would call when I'd be like, hey, I don't have a guest, but you can check out the Child Discipleship podcast as well. But we are talking during this season of Lent. It is literally Ash Wednesday when you and I are having this conversation. And I wanted to have you on because I wanted a broad perspective on what is a realistic expectation for what it looks like to walk alongside our kids during this season of preparation. When you are in your own life, but also just in the churches that you're connected to, in the leadership circles you run in, I'm curious how you think kids are entering this season in 2025 and what parents are able to do to help kind of facilitate the best possible outcomes.
Yeah. Oh, man. Okay. So there's a couple of things that come to mind when you say that. I think the first thing that I want to encourage you with is that the children in your life are watching everything that you do.
Nice. Yeah.
So you may think that like, oh, my kids aren't really aware of this. And, I'll give a simple example from my life. Last night, we went to church for Fat Tuesday where we indulged in all the things that we're not going to have for the next 40 days. And, of course, we don't call it Fat Tuesday. We call it Shrove Tuesday because we really need to make it sound better than what it actually is. Um, but our kids are watching us. They're watching everything that we do. They're hearing the conversations that we have. And so I think that's my first thing in this season to remind you is that watching these children that are watching you are taking in far more than you think that they are. And so if that is the case, which it is, then the only appropriate response to that is to then talk about it. And so if you think that as they watch you that they're not having questions, the answer to that is actually they're probably just not voicing those questions. And so creating space to talk to your kids about what you're doing. And then the second part to that is that expecting that space to be deeply messy. And let me paint you a little bit of a picture of what my morning looked like prior to school. I was given a little bit of a gift because I live in North Carolina and our school system doesn't understand that you should actually have inclement weather when you either delay or cancel. Coming from Chicago, all of you guys who are listening,
Sure.
you're like, we cancel school when there's it's below zero, it's
Right.
-20 and there's 12 inches of snow. Not here. We cancel school because there might be some snow in Nashville. And so this morning we had a school delay. And so I was like, this is beautiful. I'm going to get out our Alleluia banner. I'm going to let the kids decorate it. We're going to bear the Alleluia. We're going to get this ready. So we had about 7.5 minutes. And I think I'm making that intentional because it was not a lot of time where I've got candles lit and my kids have got all the markers and I'm like, all right, guys, let's like color this Alleluia banner. And I'm explaining to them why and what this looks like and why we're removing Alleluia from our vernacular and liturgy over the next 40 days. And it swiftly just crashes and burns, y'all.
Sure.
It wound up end of day, like end of 7.5 minutes. It winds up that my 11-year-old is maniacally laughing because he annoyed his sister and it was exactly what he wanted to do. My 7-year-old is crying because he ruined the specific part of the picture that she wanted and now it doesn't look good and she wants her own. And then my 3-year-old is copying the 7-year-old saying like, this is ugly. Can I do my own? And
Nice.
So I let the 3-year-old blow out the candles and I was like, all right, let's go to school. And my point in saying this is that if we come into this season expecting that our discipleship moments with our kids are going to be really buttoned up, then we're missing the point of all of this.
Yeah.
God showed up in the chaos and is transforming their lives in a way that I can't actually control. But I show up to the moment of faithfulness because as the primary disciple maker of my children, they're going to have this impact because this is a long-term journey. This is the everyday moments that lead to lifelong faith. And so, yeah, like y'all, this just show up, let it be awkward. And it's going to be a absolute discipleship journey that you will never forget.
Wonderful. There's 25,000 hours of podcasts that we could go for purposes of this, but I am going to try to keep this moving. I mean this very sincerely. If you want to know more about what Melanie has to say on this, go find some episodes that her and I did together. But also one of the things that makes me think of is churches like our context. We have parents, and I love the idea of just how you set those realistic expectations for parents. I love that your kids gave you an object lesson this morning, right before we were going to talk. Yeah. But we also have a ton of folks, both, our ministers, our children's ministry staff, but also plenty of folks who are leading. And I'm curious what their role is during a season like this, but also just broadly in this moment we're in 2025. When you're talking to churches, I'm curious the expectation to set for a church leader and however they define that and what their involvement is in child discipleship today.
Oh man. Well, I think our first opportunity as children's ministry leaders in the church is to actually ask, where are our parents right now? Because when we can identify where they're at, it helps us to know how we can be involved. And I'd encourage you to know that, I'll get kind of nerdy on data here for a second. There's a reason the Surgeon General put out a warning on the mental health of parents over this last year. that there are over 40% of parents who would declare that they are so overwhelmed that they are, in a sense, beyond the ability to cope. If you did not know, that is also the definition of trauma. And so that means that there's over 40% of parents who are saying that their current life is so overwhelming that they don't know what the next step looks like. So as these parents and these children are walking into your children's ministries, look at them with compassion first. That is your first job, is to identify, like, Lord, what is it in them that I could serve and love them today to help them maybe be just a tiny little bit less overwhelmed, right? Number one. I think that the second part to that then is, as we then have compassion for these parents, it's giving them space and grace to be where they're at. Some of the parents in your church are going to be all in, and they are going to want to engage in potentially like a fasting process with their kids, whether that's from sugar or whether that's from meat. They're going to have their kids at the church every time the doors are open. They're going to make intentional, like, dinner time conversations with their kids. And then there are going to be parents who feel really good about just showing up. And both of those are important to that season of their faith. And so identify the ones where you might be able to give more robust discipleship support to, but then also identify the parents who look at you and say, like, hey, the fact that I'm here is everything I could give. And give them grace to be in that space. If I can for a second, our priest he wrote this email yesterday that was just really meaningful, that I would say I'd encourage you to look at your parents through in this line. He said, you may have already decided how you're preparing to approach this season with prayer and fasting, or maybe you don't have a lot of desire and don't know what you're going to be doing. Either one of these is okay, because the Lord knows your life and your heart. He has not set himself against you as an accuser. His invitation to meet him is still there. So that is what I'd say. Encourage families to see the invitation from God to meet them exactly where they are.
That is awesome. It is the opportunity of a season like this. I think about folks who have stories like mine, coming from the nerdy term being a low church tradition, where Easter can sneak up on us, where all of a sudden it's like, oh shoot, I got to figure out where the Easter bunny is, right? But what the interesting thing is about folks who come from that experience and folks who come from a higher church experience, like what we have here at Good Shepherd, a more liturgical, more traditional experience, is you wind up at the same place. We're talking during Ash Wednesday right now. There is plenty of folks who are here every time the door opens who have, for all intents and purposes, gone through the motions. And I don't mean that as a judgment. I mean that as a reality that we, as folks who are invested in the future of the faith, have to be aware of. Where I'm curious about, and there's never enough time with you, but where I'm curious about is one of the things that I am most proud of to be at Bright Church is the way in which Awana is coming alongside all these different churches, all these different contexts, all these different leaders, all these different parents. There's a few different opportunities specific for Holy Week that I would love for you to tell folks about, but also if there's a parent listening who's like, man, I don't know where to start, I'm curious where you would direct them to.
Yeah. So here's the thing. The beauty of these Lenten practices are to help remind us that just showing up is often enough. And so I think that's what I would lead in this with, is whether you're a parent or a grandparent, and whether Easter is going to sneak up on you, or whether you have felt this longing in your heart for Lent to come, and you're greatly anticipating what the Lord is going to do in you in these next 40 days. Either way, the Lord shows up. Like, he's not dependent upon you to work. So as you move into the season, consider, what would it look like for me to create space that's intentional to see where the Lord is working? Again, because he doesn't wait for us to show up. We need to actually create space to see where he is at work. And so here's my first recommendation. Holy Week is this like built-in powerhouse week to be able to center on where Jesus was starting on Palm Sunday and coming into Jerusalem all the way to Resurrection Sunday, where we bring different liturgy and we bring different opportunities to celebrate and rejoice that Jesus is alive. And this is the crux of our salvation. So consider, how could we potentially just create small moments to help our kids fix their eyes on both where we're at and where to come. So practically speaking, my team and I develop a free resource every single year that is called A Journey Through Holy Week. And that is available on our website. Like Ross said, he will link that in the show notes. If you have a good memory, you can go to childdiscipleship.com/holy-week and you can download that for free. And that is going to walk you and your family through Palm Sunday and every single day to Resurrection Sunday. A couple of things is that, one, as parents, we know that you need everything all together in one thing, and we've done that for you. There's no extra work. There's no extra things you need to collect. Just print the thing out, like download it, print the thing out. We've given you puppets for your kids to reenact the stories when they're done. These are all printable. They're also just coloring sheets for your kids to keep busy. In addition to we have this partnership with an app called Dwell, which is this amazing Bible platform that will read the scripture over you. And so each of the devos, if you're a parent coming in saying like, I don't even know that I could read this every day, like each of these like devotional times for every day is already on the Dwell app. We're going to give you a 30-day free trial to go onto this app and have this read over you if that's the space that you find yourself in. The point of it is not perfection. It's to simply show up and watch what God will do through the conversations that you have with your kids.
Thank you for listening to the Encounter Faith podcast. This podcast is a service of G. Shep Productions from Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Naperville, Illinois. All rights reserved. If you're in the area, we'd love to meet you on a Sunday morning at our 9 a.m. or 10:45 services. At Good Shepherd, we are inviting everyone to walk together in the calling of Christ for a life of eternal impact. This podcast is produced and hosted by me, Ross Cochran, and our theme song is Wake the Earth by 1111 Worship. Thank you for listening. We'll talk again soon.